Get ready.
Welcome back to Hypnosis Live 247. This is Kaz Riley, and trancing in the sheets with me today is Karl Smith from the UK Hypnosis Academy. Karl is an author, a trainer, a firewalker, an arrow snapper, a glass walker, and runs and has many different people working for him here in the UK, and also is the author of No D in PTSD. So welcome, Karl. Thanks for coming on the show. So just before we get talking about all the great things about PTSD and how that can impact on relationships, which I know you know an awful lot about, just a quick word from our sponsors, and just to let you know that when you signed up for this network, that you were sent an email. And to activate your $200 travel card, all you need to do is to activate that email, go into it and activate it, check it's not in your spam folder. And if you want more information about how to use travel vouchers and travel cards to help generate client leads, then just put the word solutions in the box below. But other than that, we'll get back to Karl and talking about PTSD and relationships. So welcome.
Hello, hello, hello.
So tell me about, I know you've got a lot to say, and we've only got kind of a relatively short amount of time. You always have a lot to say, let's face it. So tell us about how you've seen and what you've seen or what you've experienced about how PTSD affects people and their relationships, because it's often the partners and things that kind of notice the symptoms first, isn't it?
So the interesting thing about this is my ex-wife may well watch this video, and she's going to sit and probably comment and probably mention on this as well. So it is sort of, you know, I did 12 years in the army. This top's got nothing to do with today, by the way. I just sat here, I plonked it on earlier and forgot that we were doing this. I'll be brutally honest to you people. But the thing is that 12 years British Army, I went to all the places that Polly, your local travel agents, won't send you to. So I've done all of that. Then I joined the police, and I became a counter-terrorism firearms officer, became a firearms instructor. On August 4th, 2006, I was hit by a drink driver who, or a DUI for our American friends, a DUI, a drink driver who had been drinking copious amounts of alcohol during the day, got into a car. He clipped me in the car, got me caught underneath the vehicle, rotated me underneath a couple of times. The thing for me is that it wasn't the physical injuries, as in the damage to my legs, my hip and my back and my face and stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily that it was the issue that came out of it, even though it was painful at the time. It was a few weeks later when I started coming off of the tramadol, the pregabalins and stuff like that, that what I now know to be post-trauma started popping its little head up. And the naughty noises, the repetitive noises of things that had happened many, many years ago, and visions of, I did Kosovo in 1999. I was one of the first ones to go over the border when we went down the Kačanik defile. Images that happened there that nobody needs to really vicariously live, but you can probably appreciate that I saw the worst and the best of humanity through that experience. And those things were firing off, and the noise of the car tire was firing off. There was loads of little things, and it was post-trauma, which then led me to tramadol, more pregabalin, becoming a drug addict via my doctor, and drinking lots of Jack Daniels. But the key thing that I wanted to come to on that is that I've become disassociated with myself. Those that know me now know that I'm happy-go-lucky. I can go around, dance around, do all that, and I don't really take life seriously, to be brutally honest, because in my short space in this life, I have seen the worst that people can do. So I enjoy every moment, to be brutally honest. Anyone who knows me knows I'm always playing up and playing around. No, I love that. That's me as a kid. But on the same token, I became disassociated from that. My whole life deteriorated, as in the Jack Daniels first thing in the morning, tramadol as much as I could have. If anyone's ever had any of those opiate type drugs, what they do is they just literally just numb you. You're dribbling. You're just sitting there just like watching telly, watching boring daytime TV, and listening to people on telly thinking you don't know what life's all wrong, and blaming the whole planet. But what also happened as well is that my relationship with a young lady that I'd known, I've known her all of my life, started to nosedive. The way that my perspectives, the way that I started to disassociate with stuff as well, and our marriage and everything like that all caved in and around that, and all because you don't feel like yourself. You don't want to be there. You don't want to you don't have sex due to the fact that tramadol's wrecked that. Tramadol and pregabalin have wrecked all of that. And, you know, the low self-esteem and the low confidence that you have in your own abilities and your self-worth, they all die with it as well. And from my background now is that when I was in firearms, in the UK firearms department, or SWAT to our overseas peoples, is when I was doing that, I became what we call over here family liaison officer for a police charity. It's called the Police Firearms Officers Association. Basically, it's a charity that goes out and supports officers that have been involved in police shootings all around the UK, or death in custody or anything that's been police contact. Mm-hmm. And actually, one of the key things that when we're talking about post-trauma, trauma or anxieties or really stressful stuff, is that when I am talking to them as a family liaison, let's just say, when you're talking to them, one of the striking things that does come up straight away is sex, funny enough. And it is about low libido, about low self-worth, low self-esteem and that type of stuff. And it dramatically changes, you know, something that we pay our police officers, we pay our ambulance service, we pay our fire service, we pay our lifeboats, our Coast Guard, those people that go out to protect us 24/7, that go out to go do this, but then all of a sudden they do something. They may shoot somebody, they may be involved in an incident where I've been involved with an ambulance driver that's been on a 999 or a 911 response, basically hit another vehicle, that's then killed somebody, and the knock-on effect and the support hasn't been there, which has then had a huge detrimental effect on the family, not just the person, but the family. So when I'm dealing with post-trauma and stuff like that, I don't look at the person per se, I look at the peripheries. They're the strong ones. They're the ones that are really taking a big kick in. You know, little things like that. So when it comes to post-trauma and I am dealing with it, I don't just deal with the one person, I deal with the satellite team as well that are looking after them.
It's often the way. I know from a lot of the couples that I've worked with, or people that I've worked with, often they come in because they're having to deal with a change sometimes with their partner who's been involved in an accident, or, you know, trauma comes in many ways. It's not always as violent and as huge as, you know, killing somebody or, you know, being in a war or whatever. No. But, you know, I'm very much like you. I don't like to use the word kind of disorder because I think it's too much of a label. It's like people hear disease, don't they? But that post-trauma can have such an impact on somebody unless we treat that it does affect every part of them. And one of them is their kind of masculinity, their femininity, if it's a female client, and also how people connect and interact with each other as well, isn't it? So it's that suddenly their partner's changed, and it can happen overnight, can't it? You know, that incident happens and that person has changed. It's not often a gradual thing either.
When we have a police shooting or death in custody or a contact death with police or emergency service in England, there is a massive investigation, a huge investigation. I can't talk about the jobs I've been involved in, but most of the viewers in England, especially, or Europe, would know about those jobs. But the thing is that when let's say myself, if I was an officer that was involved in a firearm situation, this can take up to between 18 months and up to 15 years. We've seen that 3 years ago, a case that happened over 40 years ago was resurrected by a family. So you can imagine that the 40 years of stress of just going on because of a police firearms incident. But is that it's the families that really take the hit. I mean, as a firearms officer or somebody that's been involved in an incident, we go in and we have black humour. Anyone knows me, I've got black humour. But on the same token, as in we have a way of dealing with it and talking with our colleagues, we can talk on a professional black humour type level in a crew room and allow them to do it. If you involve the family, sometimes because of what we call anonymity or secrecy due to the safety for the family, they're not allowed to talk about it. So they can't go to the doctors and go, my husband was involved in a shooting that caused mass riots and insurrection in around the United Kingdom and stuff like that. They can't go to the doctors. They can't talk. And that's where I came in. But they felt like a big pressure cooker. They couldn't talk to friends. They couldn't talk to their families because what they're watching and what's happening on TV, you know, what's doing it. And people react in different ways when they find out that your husband, your partner, girlfriend has been involved in a policing incident or an AMBO incident that may have resulted in fairly big news. So yeah, the stresses on a family are huge. And the other thing as well is just coming back onto your comment then, is that we do see therapists going, you can't remove post-trauma in one session. Well, that's because they're not looking at it properly. They're not looking at post-trauma. Post-trauma is an accumulation of stress factors, lots of little different things that pump in and that build up until eventually it pops. So if you can reduce that, of course you can reduce post-trauma, and that's going to upset lots of people and lots of blogging and all that lot. Karl said you can do it in one session. Good. I want you to write about that, because if you see post-trauma as one thing, you're an idiot. Post-trauma is accumulated stress factors of lots of things that have happened in the prior, and it could be anything from child abuse all the way up to a car accident. It could be anything like that all the way through their life. So to say that you can reduce post-trauma in one session or eliminate most of the key factors, you can. I do that on a daily basis. I don't dispute that. Do people need longer? Of course they do. But if you look at post-trauma as one thing, then that's when you're going to get into trouble, because that's the type of naive type approach that we do see some therapists looking at. It's one big label. We don't label things, but then they label it. Anyway, we're going to go on that in a minute. But the thing is that let's now look at that compression of accumulated stress factors and what we're talking about today. They have accumulated stress factors, but then we build on that because they're coming indoors and saying, why's my tea on the table? Why has this not been done? Why has that not been done? Why are the kids whinging? Why? And it builds and builds and builds and builds on the accumulated stress factors, which then has a knock-on effect on that bit there, which has a knock-on effect on every single thing that we do.
Well, this is it, isn't it? You know, it's that once those stress factors and it's that anxiety, it's that dissociation that then kicks in with things like self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth. People question themselves, don't they? They really start to question what they're doing in their lives. You know, there's so many different factors that can play into that just compounds then that kind of the post-trauma, but also then starts to cause extra trauma. Until we treat that, they're then effectively getting a cycle that just kind of compounds that right down, don't they? You know,
that's the thing. People, and it comes back to everything that we do. People lose their purpose. People lose it. They don't necessarily. They don't lose it as in, oh, I don't know what I'm doing tonight. They just get quagmired. They get all covered up in shit and all the other bits and bobs that have happened. Oh, damn, I swore. The thing is that they get covered with the murk and everything else that's going on, that they actually forget who they are and what they're meant to be doing. They just get caught up in day-to-day battles, that fight, flight, freeze type scenario where everything's a fight, everything's making you curl into a ball and hope it all disappears, or you're running away from situations continuously. And that could be everything from your love life to banking to tax man to everything else that comes out of it. And that's the thing there. And eventually you're so exhausted that sex is the last thing you're thinking about, to be brutally honest.
Well, even intimacy and connection, isn't it? You know, even those go. You get past the point, you see couples where they don't even want to be touched. They don't even want to be just hugged in passing as their partner's going out to work. You know, the sex thing's gone, but it's even that level of intimacy. Even with their children, quite often they're shut off, aren't they? You know,
I disassociated from my beautiful son. I really did. He's 21 now. He's living life and we have a lovely relationship. But I remember at the time just being so anti, as in, not that I didn't love him, I became aggressive, not aggressive as in punk, as in, like, what are you doing that for, really quickly and spontaneously breaking that relationship to the extent he'd go, I'm not even going to go in the house, I'm not even going to talk to my dad because my dad's an arse, which then had a knock-on effect with my partner at the time and all that type of stuff, and just causes more of, you just want to be alone in your own little bubble. And the only thing that I actually accepted at that point in time was my dog, because my dog doted on me. So to be quite honest, he was the only thing that I wanted near. He wasn't going to give me any more problems. And he was the only thing which caused, believe it or not, cuddling a dog causing jealousy. Can you believe that? And that's the thing as well. Well, you're cuddling, well, a dog gets more love than me. But for somebody who's in that position, it's not going to argue. It's not going to do anything. It's an inanimate, you know, it's a love, you know, it's a creature that just causes that, which gives you
safety. It's safety, isn't it? That doesn't question, that doesn't say to you, I love you, but you really need to go to the doctors. I love you, but there's something really that's, you know, we really need to sort this out. I love you, but our marriage is in tatters. The dog just loves you anyway. And that you often hear that, you know, it's that, you know, I know my wife loves me, or I know my husband loves me, but I've got to sort this out now, otherwise, you know, it's that. And that's often with, you know, people just don't realize how withdrawn they become when they're in grips of post-trauma, do they? You know, and I see that even with women that have given birth, you know, that have had a bad birth, and it's put down to postnatal depression. It's put down that they must have a body, you know, bad body image. And actually, it was the trauma of the birth. And nobody's, because they've got a healthy baby, people go, oh, well, you've got a healthy baby, what are you talking about? And they're still living that trauma, and then they feel guilty about having the trauma because they've got a healthy baby when other people don't, and it just all feeds into guilt. The guilt then feeds in, and that feels it even more, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just feels it all the time, and that's the key thing about it. And that's why I look at post-trauma when I'm working with people post-trauma as an accumulated stress factor rather than one big label that some people seem to sell it as. And I only specialise in post-trauma. That's all I do. I don't sit there and go, well, I'm doing weight loss today and all that type of stuff. I only deal with post-trauma and severe anxiety. And the way that I look at it and the way that I reframe it and give belief back to people, because that's the thing, that the only thing that you're doing, it's got nothing to do with techniques, absolutely nothing. People say, oh, I'm learning this technique. It's belief, it's confidence, and it's being congruent with the person that's sitting there, being a human before anything else. If you're a human, then it helps, and that's the way I do it. And it's very my ways about reframing it and talking about little bits, about those little nuclei, and then bringing it apart and then doing it that way, and then giving them that clarity back. That's my job. It's not about techniques. It's not about ideas and about this, that, and the other, because there is no silver bullet and there's none of that. So
absolutely. Well, it's about connection, isn't it? If the person, you know, especially with somebody that's so dissociated, if you can get them to connect in with you, then they're connecting with themselves, and they can connect in with others. And it's, first of all, them at least having the belief that you believe in them, even when they're not at the point yet where they can have that belief in themselves, isn't it? And sometimes we have to believe in them for them until we get them to the point that they can do it for themselves again. And that's there's no technique that you can learn, or protocol that you can learn for that, really.
I was going to say, I think the biggest thing that helps me with my career is my background, being military and police. And the other thing as well is that I've been through that and labelled with that. So when I'm talking to people, I'm not saying, well, I remember when they're talking to somebody that they're looking at and going, right, they weren't a unicorn stroker. They didn't take, you know, they've done things to the max and still been able to change it around and become the person they are. And that's the key thing about it. It's giving people belief. That's the key thing. Being congruent, having belief and having confidence and the intent just to go, you can change. If you implement this strategy and I show you how to do that, you'll clear it all up. And that's the key thing for me. Plus my background helps as well.
Absolutely. So if there's somebody watching this that, you know, whose partner, whose wife, whose husband, whose doctor is saying to them, this, you know, you've got PTSD, and they're in the place that you were, what would you say to them? What would be the kind of, what would you say to them to do? What would be the next step?
Well, the first thing is that it all depends. You've got to look for a therapist that fits with you, that congruently fits with you. Not picking up the yellow pages or picking up the internet and going, I'll find my nearest hypnotist, hypnotherapist. This is a key thing for people within our profession that need to learn this as well. You know me, and a lot of people know me, that I will sit there and I am not a classical hypnotist. I am not a classical hypnotherapist. If you say the C-bomb in my sessions, I'll come at you with the C-bomb and give you more. If you want to sit there and swear all day long, you will do. If you want me to kick your ass, I will do. Why? Because that's my personality. That's the way I do things. And I think that you have to find a therapist that you can be congruent with. If you want pink and fluffy unicorns and you want loveliness, go find somebody that fits that mold, not the first one that hits yellow pages or the internet, the Google search. Do your research. The other thing as well is don't look at it as one thing. A lot of therapists, this is my point of view, is I think that we've got three brains. 1, 2, 3. We've got three brains. We've got the gut, we've got the heart, we've got the grey matter. A lot of people go on about this unconscious, subconscious malarkey and all this lot. Well, how about we've got an unconscious, subconscious there, and a subconscious, unconscious here, and a subconscious, unconscious here. We've got three. So we've got all these battles that are going on, which then causes, you know, if there's conflict between the emotion and the intellect, the emotion will always win. Hence why our gut, our intuitive brain is there first. Have a look at what your diet is, because if we look at studies of the way that we eat sugar and the way that from shell shock and shell shock doesn't really come into it, but the way that anxieties and tensions have rose is that the sugar levels have followed a similar path. Our consumption of sugar and the rate that we're developing anxiety, stress and strains and post-trauma at the same time are there as well. So I would look at your gut flora, the way that you're looking at your body holistically, not just the grey matter. And the other thing as well is that to know that that to have belief that you can change. That all you've got to do is the same as what Kuwait said. I've mentioned Kuwait before. In every way, in every day, we're getting better and better. If you just stop for one moment and just say to yourself, no, I am fucking good. No, I can do this. I will do this. Then guess what? You've got to have that belief. And I love doing that. All my work is about giving people that belief and, you know, and showing people. And like I say to you, I don't offer therapy sessions. I offer experiences, because by the time people are finished with me, they will know something's fundamentally changed. And that's what I say. You mentioned it before, my book, There Is No D in PTSD, as in there is no disorder in post-trauma. It's on Amazon. There Is No D in PTSD outlines many different ideas. And I got people to write about therapies that I don't agree with, but it's not my choice. My point is to show people that if you look in there, there's a bit about counselling, a bit about CBT, the good, the pros, the cons, hypnosis, and other techniques that are in there as well, that are in there to show people what they are, to educate people that it's not something that you have to live with. I refuse. I was on LinkedIn the other day and somebody says, oh, you have post-trauma for the rest of your life. Vermin, visceral bile. That's all I've got to say about that. You know me, I live life to the max.
Yeah. I mean, I have the same issue when people with any disorder, actually. General anxiety disorder is my favourite sort of pet hate, because those labels give the impression to people that it's a disease that they'll have forever. I mean, there's nothing more, and especially if it's given to them by somebody they perceive to be an authority. You know, it's I think that's tragic. It's an absolute tragedy, and a lot of what we do is about delabeling people, isn't it? You know, it's almost that process.
I think if young therapists were taught how to restructure, reframe, and delabel rather than techniques, they'd get far better in this planet than what some of them really do. I
agree wholeheartedly. So tell me, where can people find you if they're looking to train with you, they want to contact you? Always hiding. Where can oh, there I see. So down there we go. So the UK Hypnosis Academy, was that .co.uk or .com?
Yeah.
So .co.uk.
Yeah.
So that's a place to find Karl, and I'm sure
on Amazon, if you look for a book called There Is No D in PTSD, you can go have a look at the book there. I think it's only $4.99. We only put it down as we wanted people within the. It says working with military and emergency services. That was just for my in to get into loads of police stations and stuff like that. But on the same time, there's lots of little bits of information. And the front part of the story is written by a Lieutenant Colonel who was in charge of the Ministry of Defence, the UK Ministry of Defence, UK Ministry of Defence mental health training. And you'll see that bit. Then there's my story, and my story is only in there to give people belief that you can change. So I always tell people on mine, and I'm going to finish on this, is that the worst day of my life became the best day of my life, because if that accident hadn't happened, I would not be traveling the world teaching and doing a profession and something I love. I eat, breathe and shit. And on that note, on swearing, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you very much. I think there are many of us in this profession that are here because of something happening, isn't it? You know, and that's why we're so passionate and committed to it. But yeah, so thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me and Karl today on Hypnosis 247 Live. And thanks for trancing in the sheets with me, Mr. Smith. It's been lovely to have you. And we'll see you again soon. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Get ready.